There's a new Unearthed Arcana out, and it's all about evil player options. These subclasses and feats don't necessarily mean your character has to be evil, but they are certainly written in a way that has a evil-leaning slant, as it were. So is the playtest material in this new UA good? Is it bad? Well, while you fold your laundry or do your dishes, I'll tell you all about it while you listen to this video in the background, because it's one of those types of videos. The first up is the Pestilence domain cleric. This is a cleric that spreads disease and plagues to debuff and harm their enemies. Being a person who worships a pestilence god probably makes you pretty evil. I don't think there are a lot of pestilence or disease gods that are good, unless it's like an Apollo type situation where it's like, I'm also a sun god, so I do good things on the side, but I also shoot people with plague arrows. Or maybe it's like you're a medicine god, so you kind of have both sides of the coin, like, oh, I can heal you of malaria, but also, here, have some malaria. Their first level 3 feature is called Blightweaver, and they get 2 things from this feature. The first thing is called Inoculated Soul. They get resistance to necrotic and poison damage, and it can't be affected by magical contagions. That is really strong for level 3. Getting 2 resistances that early is a lot. You usually see subclasses getting a resistance around level 6. To get 2 is kind of a lot. I think necrotic isn't that crazy at low levels. Poison comes up a lot at low levels, so just getting this from the rip, I don't know. I think that's a little too strong. I think it should just be consistent with other subclasses and give resistances at, level 6 or 10. Where all the other subclasses do it. I think that's more reasonable. They also get Rot and Fester. So cleric spells and cleric features can ignore resistance to necrotic and poison damage. And when you use a cleric spell or cleric feature that deals necrotic or poison damage, you can change the damage to the other type. I think this feature's kind of aggressive. It's solving a problem twice. It gives you the ability to ignore necrotic and poison damage, but it also gives you the ability to switch damage types. If you want to ignore those resistances, why not just switch your spell to necrotic damage? If you are shooting a poison spell, why not just change that poison spell to necrotic? I think you can just have it be, you can switch poison damage to necrotic damage and done. But switching damage types and ignoring damage types just seems like a lot. Do one or the other. You don't need both. They get some domain spells. Here they are on the screen. I'm not going to go over them. But overall, yeah, the spell list is pretty good. Also at level 3, they get Plague Blessing. So as an action, you can use your Channel Divinity to basically make an aura of disease. You can either have yourself emit that aura or one person you touch emit that aura, which is really cool because the aura goes out to 5 feet, so you can just cast it on your fighter friend and it's like, oh, spread disease for me, friend. What the aura actually does is if a creature starts their turn in the aura, they have to make a con save or they get a level of exhaustion. Exhaustion in new D&D, how it basically works is for every level of exhaustion you have, you get -2 to all of your D20 rolls, which is pretty brutal. So you can just kind of stack this. A lot of monsters have high constitution saves, but you know what? It lasts a minute and it's an aura. You can affect multiple creatures with it. So I think it's all right. The max amount of exhaustion Plague Blessing can give to a creature is equal to your wisdom modifier. If a creature keeps failing their con saves and the longer a fight goes on, they're going to be really, really decrepit. Kind of like how a disease works. So I think that's actually really cool. They also give a bunch of symptoms, like all the color drains from them. They turn gray. They start secreting foul-smelling mucus. They're surrounded by bugs like your Pigpen from the Peanuts and Charlie Brown. One that's interesting is you shed metallic rust-hued flakes and creaks while moving. I took that to mean this can affect constructs, which I really didn't like. I don't think any disease should affect a construct, a thing made of metal, right? But I was happy to find out a lot of constructs are immune to the exhausted condition. There are a few that aren't immune to the exhausted condition, like an animated ballista and something called a wooden donkey. They're made of mostly wood, so, it's not just about like spreading disease, it's also about spreading pestilence and rot, so you could flavor it like, rot in Elden Ring, or termites, termites, that's a pestilence, so that counts. It seems like a lot of monsters that aren't organic in 5th edition won't be affected by this ability, so depending on what kind of game you're in, this subclass might not be great. Like if you're going against a lot of elementals and a lot of constructs, this might not be great to use, but I think for most normal campaigns where there are going to be fleshy creatures running around, I think this would be a pretty good ability to use. At level 6, they get Virulent Burst. How this works is when you see a creature within 60 feet, if you go to 0 HP, you can use your reaction to make them emit disease. The emanation is normally 10 feet, but if the creature that perished had levels of exhaustion, the size of that emanation increases to 20 feet. So what does this emanation do? Each creature of your choice within the emanation has to make a con save. On a failure, you can infect them with 2 abilities. One of them is Toxic Infection. It just deals 3d6 necrotic or poison damage. Reaction to do damage is pretty strong. The other one is Putrid Shock. The target has the incapacitated condition until the end of its next turn. While incapacitated, the target speed is 0. I don't love that. I don't like an off button on creatures. It's just kind of boring. They can't do anything. Yeah, I get it's a con save, and again, a lot of creatures have high con saves, and yes, this is situational. It's just, I'd rather the enemy be able to do something, even if it's at a very weakened capacity. You can only use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, which makes sense. If you're using a reaction to deal 3d6 damage, yeah, that's pretty strong. I said it before and I'll say it again, I am not a huge fan of the incapacitated condition. I made a whole video going over why Stun and Paralyze is bad and bad for your games. I think it's bad on players. I think it's bad on monsters. I think you, yes you, the person watching this while they're washing dishes, can think of a more interesting debuff than just the turn this character off button. But yeah, overall, if you could just change the incapacitated condition, I think this would be a pretty good feature. At level 17, they get Vermin Form, which is super cool. As a bonus action, you turn into a swarm of pests. You could just turn into a pile of rats and just go about your business. One line that is really funny in this, I'm just gonna read this verbatim. Any equipment you're wearing or carrying doesn't transform with you, but you can continue using that equipment while in this form. So just imagine you have like a wand and there's just a bunch of rats waving it around. I just think that's really funny. It just makes me laugh. So what does the form actually do? You have immunity to the grappled, paralyzed, prone, and restrained conditions. But wait, there's more. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. But wait, there's more. You can enter and occupy another creature's space, and vice versa. Additionally, you get a climb speed, and you can climb on like difficult surfaces and ceilings. That's super good. That is a very, very good ability. You can only use this once per long rest, or if you expend like a 5th level spell slot or higher to get it back. The form lasts for 10 minutes. This is awesome. Also, when enemies enter your space, they take damage equal to your wisdom modifier. That doesn't matter. Like, yeah, rats are biting them. Whatever. This is a level 17 ability, and I'm dealing like, ooh, 5 damage when someone goes near me. I don't care. Turn into rats, and all the rats have to wave a wand, or a cross, in this case, because it's a cleric, to cast spells. Reading this, I think this subclass is actually really well done. There are parts of it I'm just like, eh. But overall, I think this is a pretty good subclass. I really like how you can cast a Pestilence on to a friend and he can spread it. I think that's good storytelling wise. I think that's good mechanically. There's just a lot to like here. One thing I will say is at level 3 with Inoculated Soul, you can't be infected by magical contagions. So you can be infected by regular contagions. Just thought I'd point that out. It really makes me wish they just added diseases to the game. They kind of had that in 5e, but like not really. Next up is the Circle of the Titan Druid. I have some mixed feelings about this one, but we'll go over that as we get into it. But before we get into it, you guys want some free stuff? If you want a Druid subclass that's really cool, check out the Heliana and Ryoko's Guide to Mythozoology Kickstarter. It's got a Druid that lets you wield a sword while you're in your wild shape, so if you want to be a sword dog Sith or a dinosaur doing flips and parries, then you will want to check out this Kickstarter. And if you are still unsure about it, that subclass along with a bunch of other stuff is totally free on their Kickstarter page. So you can try it out before you decide if this Kickstarter is worth your money or not. The book has rules for summoning kaijus, piloting giant mechs, and a new class called the Maker. It's a class that can make prosthetic arms and even a super exoskeleton suit. It's super cool. Speaking of cute things, look at this dog. It's also got a ton of cool monsters with super rad art. I mean, look at this art, dude. And none of this art was made by AI. It's all human made, so you know it's good. And if you get both the Forgotten Monsters and Forgotten Myths physical books, you will also get a free set of mystery dice. If any of that stuff interests you, click on the link in the description down below and check out Heliana and Ryoko's Guide to Mythozoology. Thank you to the Heliana and Ryoko's Guide to Mythozoology Kickstarter for sponsoring this video. And now, let's talk about Titan Druid. This subclass is all about turning into a kaiju, or a big monster. You can basically turn into Godzilla, or Mothra, or the Kraken. It's a lot like Moon Druid, but just, more monster themed. At level 3, they get prepared spells like every other druid, except much like Moon Druid, they can also cast their circle spells while in their monster form. They get Cure Wounds so they can heal themselves, Fear so they can do the big Godzilla roar and scare people, that's pretty cool. Destructive Waves so they can do like a big ground slam. That all seems very appropriate and cool. Also at level 3, they get their Titan form. This is the thing that lets you turn into a monster. You can choose between a land form, a water form, and a flying form. You can use them all on land, but that's generally what the vibe they're going for is for each one. So the stat blocks for these things are kind of weird. The first thing you'll see is the AC, and the AC for the Behemoth, which is the highest AC creature, is 11 plus your Wisdom modifier. In 5.5, the Moon Druid could make their AC 13 plus your Wisdom modifier. So it's a bit low, and also what's a bit weird about this UA is the temp HP they get from transforming is 2 times your Druid level, which the Moon Druid in 5.5 was 3 times your Druid level. So they're a bit more squishy, which is interesting. You wouldn't really expect that for like a giant kaiju. What's weird about this is Godzilla might be less tanky than a bear, which is not something you'd expect, but oh well. The next weird thing is your strength and dexterity scores are equal to your wisdom score while in this form, and your constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores don't change. Considering you could just have at level 3 a 16 in strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom while you're transformed. That's a lot! That's a lot. And this is why I don't roll for stats, so I don't end up in situations like this. I love point buy, I will always do point buy, but a 16? And all those stats? Don't love that. But you get this at level 3. It's kind of aggressive. It really depends on can these creatures manipulate things like you would with your hands? I think that's really going to decide how powerful that is what you can do in between battles, and even in battles, still. A 16 in all the most important stats, kind of a lot. With Moon Druid, you got all the physical stats of the creature you turned into. You kept all your mental scores. Now it might be fine because you might not be able to do much while in these forms because you're like a large creature and you only get bigger as you level up. So you can't realistically move through a dungeon while you're in a gargantuan form. You can't really, talk to shopkeepers or go in town while you're Godzilla. I understand they have less AC and temp HP than Moon Druid, but still, this is a lot. This is a lot. They get Dark Vision, they're siege monsters, they do more damage to objects and structures. All of their attacks are a D8 plus your wisdom modifier and normal damage. Yep, that's fine. So all of the monsters have unique traits. The land one, what it gets at level 3 is they get an incandescent breath. This is a Godzilla breath. If you spend a level 1 spell slot or higher, you make creatures make a dex saving throw, and in a 60-foot line, you can deal 2d8 radiant damage to creatures who fail that save. You spend 2d8 per level of spell slot expended, which I feel like is a lot. I feel like for a level 2 spell slot, 4d8 radiant damage in a 60-foot line is a bit much. Oh, excuse me. It's 4d8 plus your wisdom modifier for a level 2 spell slot. Keep in mind, Shatter, one of the stronger damage dealing level 2 spells, deals 3d8 damage and only has a radius of 10 feet. Less damage and less area. Then there's the water form you can turn into called the Leviathan. They get an ink cloud. I think the ink cloud can just be used on land, like in the air, not in the water. So that's interesting. The way the ink cloud works is when you take damage, you can use a reaction to spend a spell slot, and you emit this ink cloud that heavily obscures the area in a 15-foot radius, and you can also move up to your speed away. So basically how this works is an orc walks up to you, hits you with a club, you fart this ink cloud, and it propels you away from the orc. The ink cloud lasts 1 minute and can be dispersed by a gust of air. A reaction to move away from a creature when you take damage is really strong. I guess you can use this subclass as a slippery kiter and less like a tank. And the third and final form is the Insectoid. This is the flying one. They get flyby so they don't provoke attacks of opportunity when they fly out of an enemy's reach. That's really helpful. This is also really interesting because at level 3, you can get a fly speed. And this is not a small fly speed. This is 40 feet of fly speed at level 3. Not a huge fan of that, but you know what? I think that's the direction D&D is moving, so, it is what it is. With Aasimar, it was like you get a fly speed for a minute. I thought that was fine. This is you get a 40-foot fly speed for an hour, which I think it can lead to some troubles with newer DMs. I like characters not being able to fly to level 5, sue me. All of these monster forms have 10 feet of reach, so you can attack while you're a bit out of range. I did not expect this subclass to be so slippery and kitey, but I'm okay with it. The Insectoid gets an interesting ability called Energizing Pollen. You can expend a level 1 or higher spell slot and emit a cloud of healing pollen that can restore a number of hit points equal to 2d8 plus 5. You get another 5 healing for every spell slot above level 1. What makes this interesting is this is like a healing burst that emits from yourself, and you can divide those hit points among the creatures in that burst. So let's say I use Energizing Pollen and I roll 13 for how much healing I give people. I can give a fighter 1 HP and I can give the barbarian 12 HP. It's basically a cure wounds that you can divide amongst your friends and has a little bit more range. I think that is definitely worth a spell slot. It's a little unclear if you can choose yourself in that Energizing Pollen thing. It would be very cool if that was the case. At level 5, all of these forms get multi-attack, so they can all attack twice. At level 6, they get Dire Impact. It gives you 2 abilities. The first one is Shockwave. When you enter your Titan form, or when you spend a bonus action and spend a level 1 or higher spell slot, you can emit a Shockwave. Creatures in the Shockwave have to pass a con save or get knocked prone. We love kicking people while they're down in D&D. And they also get Elemental Rend. Whenever you hit a creature in your monster form, you deal your choice of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage rather than its normal damage. This is very much a pattern you see in newer WotC design, characters just being able to change damage to a big variety of damage types, and I really just don't like it. It's a really lazy design choice. Whenever WotC can't think of what to give a class or subclass, they give them the ability to change damage types or teleport. You saw that in Moon Druid. Moon Druid could teleport and everyone was like, why? What? Why? And what's funny about Elemental Rend is they kind of already had this. The 5.5 Druid got Primal Strike, which lets you add on an extra d8 of cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. The Druids already had this ability, and all you did was, okay, now all of their damage can be this thing, and you've added they can also do acid damage. And it's just so frustrating to see, because if you're giving a creature resistances, there are so many subclasses and now classes that can just change their damage type for that not to ever be an issue. Titan Druid has it, Base Druid has it, Giant Barbarian had it, Dragon Monk had it, 5 Elements Monk had it, Pestilence Druid has it. In a previous Unearthed Arcana, they gave it to Ancestral Guardian Barbarian. You see this in a lot of melee-based characters where they can just change their damage type, and that's to help them, get around resistances and stuff like that. And I understand that, but if you give everyone the ability to change their damage type to whatever they need, damage types are gonna matter less and less. I feel like this springs from this need to be optimal all of the time, where if you're not dealing 100% of your optimal damage, you can't enjoy the game. I see people do that. I've seen people go on tirades that if you limit how much dark vision you give to playable species, it will nerf marshals because that will force them to hold a torch, and so they can't use a bow or a greatsword or a shield, and then they can't have fun, which is so beyond the pale, so sweaty coded, so just like, dude, relax, it's just a game. You don't need to be playing at 100% capacity all the time. This is a team game. I'm sure your friend who's playing a sorcerer won't mind picking up the light spell. And if they don't have the light spell, I'm sure they won't mind holding a torch. It's not a big deal. This is a solvable issue, and it shouldn't even be a big issue. There is going to be, and there should be, situations where you're not going to be the best kitted out for this. That's why we have different encounters. That's why we have different monsters. There are going to be fights where the monk does better. There are going to be fights where the rogue does better. There's going to be fights where the wizard does better. There should be fights where some people can shine and some people struggle more. That's fine. That's variety. And I think that's kind of where these abilities come from, where you can change your damage types. I don't see a lot of monsters that are resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So what's the point of this? And it's not like vulnerabilities come up a lot. Maybe it's changed more in the 5.5 monster design. I could be wrong. Please tell me if I am. And I'd be fine if you could change your damage type to one thing and then you're committing to that one damage type. I like that. I think that tells a better story. But the fact that you can do all of these damage types anytime for any attack is just so much. Like, it just makes resistance not a thing. And I'd be okay with this if one class had this, if one subclass had this, but it's getting to be that so many subclasses have this, it's just annoying. It's an old standby that they keep going to. It's not interesting design, because most of the time, 1d6 fire damage is going to be the same as 1d6 cold and 1d6 slashing. It's all the same. And it just makes me think, are these subclasses written by AI? And I don't know, man. I'm seeing a lot of repetitive stuff in newer things, and it doesn't breed confidence. You know what the worst part is? I kind of like this subclass, but it's just try. Write something different for once, for God's sakes. Anyway, that's my rant about changing damage types. I'm putting Ramble Wizard away now. At level 10, you get Primal Havoc. This feature lets your monster forms become huge creatures. Additionally, while you are huge or larger, difficult terrain caused by like normal stuff like rubble and undergrowth and snow doesn't cost extra movement. You can knock over a whole building and walk through the rubble as if it's nothing. Also at level 10, all of your forms get a unique ability. The Behemoth, the land form, gets Rampager. When you enter a space of an enemy that is at least one size smaller than you, you're huge, so you know, that'll be a lot easier for you. That creature has to make a strength saving throw, and if they fail, the target is prone, and if they were already prone, they take 2d6 bludgeoning damage. This is just from entering a creature's space. It's not an action, it's not a bonus action. You can just walk up to them and then they'll fall prone. Where are these abilities on the marshals, Watsy? Why are we giving a very, very good melee ability to the druids, and only the druids? Come on, man. You're going to see in this UA itself, you're going to see a fighter subclass, and they don't get anything this cool. They don't get anything this strong, and it's so frustrating. Either way, this is a cool ability. I like it. It's very good. Good for the druid. The Leviathan, the water form, they get a thing called Toxic Stench. Basically, you got a stank aura, you got a stank emanation of 10 feet. Any creature of your choice has to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failure, creatures take 2d4 poison damage and have the poison condition until the start of its next turn. Holy crap, that is crazy. Just the fact that you always have this on. No bonus action, no action. You just go into your wild shape and you always got the stank. Holy crap. And remember, your wild shapes can last like hours. So you just always have this stank aura where you can just constantly be poisoning people. Granted, this is level 10, so you're probably going to be fighting a lot of creatures that are immune to the poison condition, but I don't know, man. Like, if this was a bonus action and like, oh, you have to spend a level 1 spell slot and it lasts a minute or something, I think that'd be fine, but just always on is a lot. The Insectoid form, the flying one, gets Hive Mind. Basically, you can forge a telepathic link with any creature you can see as long as they speak at least one language. This is very interesting. So I can see a group of adventurers that have a Titan Druid with them, and they go to some village where they can't speak the language, and so someone turns into this huge moth and just starts communicating with people telepathically. That is really interesting. At level 14, you get Monstrous Appetite. This feature lets you turn your monster forms into gargantuan creatures. Gargantuan is the largest size category in D&D 5e, by the way. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with one of your attacks in your Titan form, you automatically grapple them. The creature gets automatically grappled. Wow, I hate that. I think that's lame. I think automatically applying conditions to anyone is really boring design. I'm here to roll dice. If we're not rolling dice, why are we playing? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna have to give that one a thumbs down. There's the Swallow ability. As a bonus action, when you are grappling a creature, you can try and swallow them, and when they are swallowed, they get the Restrained and Blinded condition and has total cover against attacks. Basically, you know, it's inside a stomach, you can't hit it. And, you know, at the start of each of its turns, it takes 2d8 acid damage. That is nothing. 2d8? A level 14? Whatever. Also, you can swallow multiple creatures. You can swallow an amount of creatures equal to your wisdom modifier. You have to maintain concentration to keep these creatures swallowed, and if you lose concentration at any point, you vomit up the creatures. Me in Paleo Games made a Tyrannosaurus Barbarian that gets a very similar ability to this. It's a dinosaur-themed barbarian that can turn really big and is all about grappling creatures, and they get a swallow ability where they eat someone whole. That one acts more like Power Word Kill, where it can instantly destroy a creature, and if you don't instantly destroy a creature, they take like a huge amount of damage instead, where you just take a chunk out of them. But when the Titan Druid swallows someone, it deals 2d8 acid damage per turn. and they're still alive while in your stomach. I don't know if I love that, because the way I rule being swallowed by creatures, because I've done this to players, if you get swallowed, you're probably gonna have an easy time stabbing it. Like, you hit anywhere. It's not like they can dodge. Yeah, I understand you're like restrained, it's tight quarters, you can't see anything, you're being burned, but like, I don't know, just point your sword in a direction and just move it forward, push. I would kind of give that same benefit if a player used that on a creature. There's no way your normal AC and the AC for the inside of your stomach are the same. That AC's gotta be like, as much as a slime would in D&D, like 8 or 6. I understand that maybe that's really cruel, but I am consistent. If the players get swallowed, they would have the same benefits. Those same benefits extend to people getting swallowed by this Titan Druid. How do I rate this ability? I think me and Paleo Games did it better. So, suck it, Watsy. You'll never be as good as me. So is this subclass good? Yeah. I just wish this was the Moon Druid we got in the 2024 player handbook. I think it needs some big nerfs, but it's got some really solid ideas. The next up is the Hell Knight Fighter. This is a fighter powered by the 9 Hells, where they work for archdevils to fight in the blood wars and carry out their evil deeds, and they light themselves on fire, and they can set their weapon on fire, and I just keep thinking to myself, man, if you made this a barbarian subclass, you could just call it the Karlach subclass and watch it print a bunch of money. I know Karlach could be any subclass she wanted to, but she still had enough unique things going on where you could make a subclass based around her. Look, I'm just saying, people would buy that. That's all I'm saying. Hell Knight's cool, but you know, Karlach's one of the most popular characters aside from Vecna. But whatever, we're here to talk about Hell Knight, which is a cool idea on its own. At level 3, this subclass gets Diabolical Gift. They get Devil's Sight, they can see in dim light and darkness and magical darkness within 120 feet. Okay, sure, I don't think we need to give this guy dark vision, but you know, whatever. This is all they get for social features, just seeing in the dark, so great. They also learn the Infernal language, sure, that's whatever. At level 3, you get Hellfire Weapon. It lets you light your weapon aflame with Hellfire. It doesn't do extra damage. If I can light my weapon on fire and it doesn't do extra damage, what's the point, man? But it does let you change your damage type from normal to fire, and I'm actually okay with that. I think this is a lame, boring ability, but look, you can change it to 1 damage type. It's on theme, but that's not the main level 3 feature. The main level 3 feature is Infernal Wound. With Infernal Wound, you get a set amount of d6s. Depending on how you read this, you either get 1 Infernal Wound die, or you get a number equal to your Constitution modifier. That's definitely a typo, probably the Constitution modifier one. What these Infernal die do is when you hit a creature, you can spend the die, and it gives them an Infernal Wound. When they have an Infernal Wound, it lasts for a minute, and the creature takes 1d6 damage at the start of each of their turns. It lasts that way for a minute, or until they regain hit points, or until the wound is staunched. That is kind of boring, to be perfectly honest. It's just more damage. At least with Battlemaster, you could deal more damage and then like knock a creature prone, move an ally away, try and disarm a creature. But with this, it's just extra damage. So creative, cool. At level 7, you get Advanced Wounds. When you apply an Infernal Wound to a creature, one of 3 effects can happen. Either A, they shoot out caustic pus, and each creature within 5 feet from the target takes acid damage equal to your Constitution modifier, and the target also gets the poison condition until the start of their next turn. It also says each creature within a 5-foot emanation. So that can include you. So unless you have a reach weapon, like let's say you're just using a greatsword, you would also poison yourself. You have to use a reach weapon if you want to make this work, which isn't great. Then there's Rupture of Cania. I read this as Rupture of Cana, and I'm like, the wedding where Jesus turned water into wine? And I was thinking like, oh man, turn their blood into wine, that's really cool. It's not that at all. When you hit a creature, you could do extra force damage equal to your Constitution modifier. Oh cool, more damage, so creative. Then there's Stygian Gangrene. Infernal Rhymes spreads throughout the wound. The target takes cold damage equal to your Constitution modifier. And they can't take reactions until the start of their next turn. That's actually interesting. I am not kidding when I say Stygian Gangrene, I think is the only good and interesting ability on this entire subclass. And it's kind of just okay. At level 7, they get Hellforged Equipment. So while you are wearing armor or wielding a shield, you have resistance to fire damage. I don't know why there is this qualifier to be wearing armor. That seems needless. Just give them their resistance. Maybe it's part of their lore. It's more text. You know, all it is just more text. Needless text. Save on your ink costs. Get rid of that line. It also gives you Unholy Fire. Damage from your weapon attacks and fighter features ignore resistance to fire damage. This is the second subclass that can just ignore resistances. I feel like that's a sign of a problem if you have to keep giving features where you can just ignore resistances. It just comes back to the power gaming thing, I think, where if you're not playing optimally 100% of the time, people can't have fun. And I hate that we're catering to those people. It's just, ugh. Man, I would rather you try and get around this problem in a more unique way. At level 10, they get Hellfire Surge. When you use your action surge while wearing armor or wielding a shield, you get a 10-foot emanation of fire that you can light people on fire with. They take fire damage equal to your infernal wound die, and they have the burning condition. By the way, the burning condition, how that works is they take 1d4 fire damage at the start of their turn. So at level 10, you can use your once per short rest ability to deal a max of like 10 damage to creatures within 10 feet of you. Meanwhile, in the same UA, Titan Druid can just walk next to creatures and knock them prone. No action. They can keep doing that for hours and hours and keep using that ability. Watsy, do you even try to make fighters good? It's so incredible. Come the on. At level 15, you get Blister of Avernus. When you roll a 6 on your infernal wound die, you can roll another d6 and add it to the damage, which I think that's pretty fun. It's exploding dice, for those who don't know. That's the name for it. But here's the thing. The maximum number of d6s you can add to this infernal wound damage is a total of 3. Don't put a limit on it. If they keep rolling 6s, let it ride, dude. If you one-shot a boss because you roll 26s on a d6 in a row, that's rad. I'm totally fine with that. That is a story you can tell to your friends. That is so cool. I think putting a limit on that limits fun to a needless degree, because realistically, you're not going to do an absurd amount of damage with this. You're gonna deal a healthy amount of damage, but it's not gonna be game breaking. At level 18, you get Hellfire Condemnation. It's a flavor ability. A flavor ability I think is pretty cool, but it doesn't do a whole lot. Whenever you reduce a creature down to 0 hit points with your Infernal Wound or your Hellfire weapon, they go to hell. Any layer you choose on one of the 9 hells, they go to hell as a Lemure. A Lemure is a fleshy blob creature kind of thing. There's a picture on screen. It's pretty gross. It's one of the lowest forms of devils. Yeah, this ability probably won't help a lot, but like, you know, you can choose to damn people to hell. That's interesting. I like this ability. I don't think it's super impactful, but it's very flavorful, so I welcome this. And the real level 18 ability is Infernal Bargain. When you roll on your Infernal Wound die, you can treat a 1 as a 6. So that is very good for your Blister of Avernus, so you can just keep rolling those d6s. Again, I would get rid of the cap for it. That's just me. Overall, I think the subclass is pretty lame. It's just features that deal more damage, and it's not even that much damage. I wish there were some more things like Stygian Gangrene that have an effect outside of just damage. This is just Battlemaster, but worse. And it commits the greatest sin in all of D&D design. It's boring. Next up is the Demonic Sorcery Sorcerer. This is a sorcerer who gets their powers from the Abyss, powered by demons and Demogorgon and Yeenagoo and, I don't know, probably some other big monkey. Before we get into this, I just want you to keep something in mind. I think this is a good subclass, but a bad sorcerer subclass. It really feels like this should be a subclass for barbarian or fighter or monk. This subclass is all about being pretty close to people, a thing a class with a d6 hit die should not do, in my opinion. This subclass is not going to be living as long as the Blade Singer, let's just say that. Anyway, at level 3, they get Abyssal Rupture. When they spend at least 1 sorcery point as part of an action or bonus action, they can do one of the 2 following effects. They can use Demonic Lash, which pulls a creature 10 feet closer to them and deals 1d4 slashing damage, or they can use Fiendish Carapace. Until the start of their next turn, attack rolls against them have disadvantage. They also get extra spells at level 3 that are demonic spells. The spells aren't really catered toward a melee build. This is all they really get at level 3 to help them with that melee focus. What are you gonna do when you pull a creature in, right? Like, you could Burning Hands or Thunderwave, and you have shield and mage armor to protect yourself, but I don't know, man. If you get hit, it's gonna be bad. And it just keeps making me think, this would be a good fighter ability. Man, maybe this is what Hell Knight should have been. At level 6, they get Abyssal Aura. When you use your innate sorcery, you can emit an aura around you that goes out for 10 feet. You then roll a d6 to determine what the effect is. You can only use this feature once per a long rest, but you can restore uses of it by spending 2 sorcery points. I think that's kind of lame. If you are already having to use innate sorcery, I feel like having more restrictions on this is kind of unnecessary. You can only use innate sorcery twice per a long rest, I think. Yeah, it's twice per a long rest. So I feel like just tying this ability to that is fine, or don't have it tied to that and just make it cost sorcery points. That's totally fine too. Anyway, what the effects do, there are 6 different effects. You're gonna get a random effect every time you use it, but they're all pretty cool. There's Sticky Webs, which gives you an aura of webs that can restrain creatures. There's Caustic Ooze, which gives you an emanation that deals acid damage, and creatures have a chance to fall prone. Terrifying Screams, it deals psychic damage, and can inflict the frightened condition. Enthralling Spores heavily obscures an area for creatures of your choice. You can have it so your friends can see through the aura, but your enemies can't. Only enemies you know, though, so that's interesting. There's Poisonous Foliage, basically Poison Ivy, and then there's Invigorating Bones. Spectral limbs erupt from the ground, reaching out to sap life around them. That's really rad. Each enemy in the start of the area takes 1d10 necrotic damage, that's the highest here so far, and can't regain hit points until the start of their next turn. So the effect's not as good, but hey, it deals more damage. But overall, I think this ability is pretty cool. At level 14, you get Abyssal Conduit. It gives you 2 abilities. The first one is your Abyssal Aura. Instead of a 10-foot emanation, it now has a 20-foot emanation, so it doubles in size, and you get Controlled Chaos. Whenever you roll an Abyssal effect on the table, you can roll twice and choose which one you want from those 2 options you rolled. It's kind of like Wild Magic Barbarian. I like that. And at level 18, you get Fiendish Servant. It basically lets you cast Summon Fiend once per a long rest without casting a spell slot. It just has to be a demon when you summon it. A free 6th level summon is pretty good. Nothing wrong with that. So overall, what do I think of this subclass? Oh man, this is awful for Sorcerer. This is terrible. This should be a Barbarian or something, or a Fighter. Oh man, this would make such a cool Fighter subclass. Just emitting that stuff, getting all up in your enemy's face, and then just whacking them while they're all in your sticky webs and they can't escape. That is rad, dude. I would love this if it wasn't on a Sorcerer. You wouldn't really have to change much. Instead of Abyssal Aura, using your innate sorceries, or using sorcery points, you just give it a limited amount of use. Like if this was Monk, you could have it be based off your key. That would be fine. If it was Fighter, you could maybe have it based off second winds, which is like, whatever. I would just rather have it just be their own uses. I think this is a good subclass on the wrong class. I would love to see this on just a martial class. I think this is a mostly finished subclass. You just gotta give it to the right class, that's all. You, the viewer, could take this subclass and just put it on any martial, change very little, and probably have a great time with that. And lastly, they added some feats to this UA. These are feat trees that let you either become a Death Knight or a Lich. For the Death Knight, you have to start out with Death Knight Initiate. It gives you a resource called Death Points. You have a number of Death Points equal to your proficiency bonus. You get them all back on a long rest. And those Death Points allow you to cast a sauced up version of a spell, and different feats in this tree give you access to different spells, like Wrathful Smite or Summon Steed, Bane, Fear, and all of the feats increase your strength, constitution, or charisma by 1, your choice. And if you have the Death Knight Initiate feat plus 1 more, you can get Death Knight Ascension. It also gives you a half ASI. It turns your creature type to undead. You have resistance to necrotic and poison damage. You can't get exhausted from dehydration, malnutrition, or suffocation. Yeah, because that'll ever come up. And it gives you a Hellfire Orb, which is basically a fireball that does 2d6 fire and 2d6 necrotic damage per death point you put into it, and you can put up to 5 death points into it. So that is a 20d6 fireball. So is it worth it to become a Death Knight? If you want to, I would say so. A 20d6 fireball is pretty good. And lastly, we have the Lich Feat tree, which lets you become a Lich if you invest into it enough. You start out with Lich Initiate, which lets you create a spirit jar that you bind your soul to. A spirit jar, by the way, is the new word they're using for phylactery. When you reduce a creature to 0 HP, or a creature is reduced to 0 HP within 10 feet of you, you can consume their soul, and your next attack does some extra damage. Very spooky. All of these feats, including the Lich Initiate, also have half ASIs that boost your int, Wisdom, or Charisma, your choice. One of the feats lets you eat a soul and recover some lower level spell slots. One of them lets you consume a soul and then dole out some temp HP to your friends. The one I really want to talk about is Paralyzing Touch. You have to have Lich Initiate first, and then you can invest into it, so you need to be a minimum of like level 8 to get this ability. Basically, it lets you learn the Chill Touch cantrip. When you deal damage with Chill Touch, you can expend a level 1 or higher spell slot. When you spend a spell slot, you deal 1d10 extra damage per level of spell slot expended, and you make the creature you hit make a Constitution saving throw or be paralyzed. So at level 8, when you hit someone with a cantrip, you can use a level 1 spell slot to deal 2d8 plus 1d10 necrotic damage, plus have a chance to paralyze them. That's a lot. I think that's a lot. I don't know, man. This is sort of like a Paladin Smite. You hit him with a cantrip, and then you can spend a spell slot to just burst damage. I wouldn't allow this ability. Like, imagine if Chromatic Orb could also just paralyze people. Just, ugh. And the last feat in the tree is Lich Ascension. You need the Lich Initiate feat, plus one more Lich feat to get this. It's a half ASI as well. It turns your creature type into undead. You have resistance to necrotic and poison damage. The real reason you want this is you learn the Fear spell. You always have her prepared, which is really nice, and you can cast it without expending a spell slot a number of times equal to your spellcasting modifier. A free casting of Fear is great. One last thing, this feat also gives you Rejuvenation. If you die, you come back in 1d10 days. As long as your spirit jar is fine, you just come back with a new body. You could be disintegrated, and you will come back. I don't know how I feel about this, to be perfectly honest. It effectively makes someone immortal, but that is what a Lich is all about. But should players have that ability to be immortal? Is the spirit jar just a Chekhov's gun now that enemies will try and search for and destroy? That's a tough one. I don't know. I think this feat is really going to depend heavily on what kind of table and what kind of game you run. Overall, this UA I think is pretty good. There are some things I don't like about it, but I think it's a good first draft. I really hope this isn't AI generated because I do kind of like this stuff. I really hope it is written by humans. I want things written by humans, dang it. But if it is written by humans, I think this is a really good first draft. I think they should keep with it, change a few things around, stop focusing so much on changing damage types, and just focus on making cool and unique abilities. Just start from scratch with Hell Knight. There's nothing there. There's nothing of value, though, with that. It's bad. I'm interested to see what people thought, so let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this UA. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Later.